right, Jim, welcome. You are my official repeat guest on the podcast. Welcome to Better. I'm so happy to be talking to you today.
Stephanie, this is a real honor and a pleasure. And thank you everyone who's listening and or watching this right now. I'm so excited to have this conversation.
And we are going to be talking today about your new book, Limitless. And as you know, I was telling you a little bit in the pre-chat, I'm in the process of writing my own book. And as I was reading your book, of course, as any author might attest, once you are in the process of becoming an author, you start looking at the way that people are structuring their books. So of course your content is outstanding, and we're going to dive into that today. But I also just wanted to note that the way that you have structured the book is also setting up the reader to win. Like, there's so much neuroscience in it, but you can see you've really thought about the different ways that people might learn, and we're going to talk about some of those different ways today. But you've seeded that through the book, and it's just like I bow down to you because it's genius.
I thought that, it's a book about learning how to learn. And I thought presenting it in a way that is easy to grasp and easy to understand and also easy to apply and integrate was really the outcome. So thank you for noticing. It was the content and also the context. The structure is so important to learning, and
Yeah.
there's definitely a method behind it. And congratulations! I cannot wait to read your book.
Oh, I'm excited. Like I said, it's like birthing a child. Like, it's just I'm having all the labor pains right now, but I don't have the baby yet. I don't have my book baby yet, but when it's done, you'll be certainly one of the first people to see it. So.
I
So
cannot.
let's talk about the title, because I'm a word geek. I love words, and then we'll tuck into the material after that. But why was the title Limitless for you? Why was that the title of your book?
So it is one of those things where a word, we know words have different effects on the human brain. The words we choose to use have a lot of power. Limitless for me, I feel like, because I grew up with so many of the opposite, where I felt like I had so many limits that I placed upon myself through, or maybe it was a circumstance of, and maybe people could relate to this, that they somehow felt some held back by a label, by their environment, by the experiences, by external things. And I feel like right now that if anyone who's listening to this right now can think about an area of their life where they felt like they're not making progress in an area that they're working hard though. And so my thought process was, how do I build this aspiring movement where really show people the power that they have. And Limitless is not about being perfect at all. It's not about having a photographic memory or just to be able to just read something in a minute or two. It's really about advancing beyond what you believe is possible. And I wanted to show people really what's possible in a world of technology where it's amplifying certain, overload and distraction and these things that we with the ultimate technology is the human brain. And I wrote this book to be an owner's manual for showing people how to upgrade that, like as often as they upgrade maybe their apps or their phone, to be able to upgrade the potential of their minds. And so I believe that most all limits are learned, and the good news is they can be unlearned. And that's why I wrote this manual.
I love that. And I love that, because what we're essentially getting at is that beliefs really drive our behaviors. So you really get down to, and you break this out in your limitless model, which when you look in the book, it's like a Venn diagram with three intersecting circles around how we can, like you said, not be perfect, but progress beyond what we think we're capable of. And that's why I think that this book is such a seminal piece of work, because you can continue to revisit this book over and over as you continue to shed the layers of your beliefs in order to continue to ascend. So I just I'm so excited to let's start talking about the model. So let's talk about those three circles that I referred to, your limitless model. What is it composed of, and what is the meaning behind it?
Okay, so the Limitless model is a framework for not only accelerated learning, but for accessing human potential. And so I apply it towards accelerated learning, but people could use this model to as an explanatory schema for why we're stalled in certain areas of our life. And I think this conversation right now is very topical because, while it's wonderful to read a book a week, while it's wonderful to remember people's names and learn languages and maintain your focus, even in the background here, you hear some sirens, and I happen to be in New York City right now, and so it's a great exercise of having people to exercise their focused muscles, if you will. The
Yes.
book is a model for human achievement and also mental fitness, and that's something I'm very excited about. Being a brain trainer for almost 28 years, it's something where I want people to become mentally fit. And so, what I want people to do is make this conversation kind of like a like a little workshop. I want everyone to think about an area of their life where they feel stuck.
Yeah.
Maybe it's they're not making progress in their career. Maybe they're an entrepreneur and they feel a little insecure about are they doing things right, or maybe they're stalling, they're procrastinating. There's some at some level they feel like they don't deserve it, or maybe it's an area of health or wellness. Maybe it's their finances. Maybe it's something going on in their relationship. So I want to have everyone to have something very specific. And so there's three M's that keep us in a box. And metaphorically, if you feel like you are in a box in this area, it's a 3D box, like a cage, right? And you just don't know why. It's like you listen to podcasts or you read books or you go to conferences and you're not progressing like you feel like you should or like everybody else you think is.
Right.
And so the first M, the first circle or three dimensions, the dimensions that keep you in that box is your mindset. Now, this is something you and I have talked about in your previous episode, that we had this conversation. I mean, everyone knows the importance of mindset, and if you believe you can or believe you can't, either way, you're right. As Henry Ford talked about, and always talk about all behavior is belief driven. But we're not born with these beliefs or these mindsets, and we know through the work, seminal work like Dr. Carol Dweck, who wrote the book Mindset, the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset, that it can keep you in that box. That if you believe that you are a certain level of intelligence, or you believe you have a certain level of potential, or you have a certain earning capability. For me, mindset really is a set of assumptions and attitudes about something, about the world, or about especially ourself. And these when we evaluate it, a lot of this has to do with self-awareness, meaning that when I was struggling in school, and one of my teachers, out of frustration, and I don't think it came from a bad place. I actually feel like when she pointed to me and said, "That's the boy with the broken brain," in context, as I evaluated as an adult when I was 9 years old, because I was holding the class back and I was getting teased for it by my classmates. I think it was her way of coming to my defense, saying, "Hey, cut it out. This boy, has challenges." But all I heard was that broken brain part of it, and that became my label, and that label became my limit, and that put me in that box, right? And then I just reinforced that box every single time I had a thought. It kind of wired that box to be stronger and stronger. So mindset really is, for me, functionally, is what you believe is possible, what you believe you are capable of, what you believe you deserve. That would fall under mindset. The second M, and I think everyone could think about, let's take something simple like remembering names. I know a lot of people have struggles and will apply it towards something simple like that. Somebody can have the ultimate mindset, but if they don't have the second M, which is motivation, they're still going to be in that box. So maybe you're in that box about your challenged memory, right? But maybe you've seen me do demonstrations. You're like, oh, that guy can memorize all that stuff, and he had learning challenges and 3 traumatic brain injuries. Maybe I could do that too. But then the second M is your motivation. right? And motivation is so important. And when I say motivation, it's a loaded word, and I'll be the first to admit it. Some people think that motivation is just going to an event and jumping on chairs and wave, just
Right. Clapping and singing and yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
that excitement is not what I'm talking about, because that wanes, right? That doesn't, you go to get really excited after you listen to a podcast and feel like you're motivated, but when the podcast is over, nothing changes. So the proof, the evidence that you're motivated is that you're taking some kind of action. Your motivation. I mean, almost the word action is almost built into that word. And so I believe there are a couple of lies, just like there are lies around learning. When I say lies, it stands for something, of course, as a
You are the acronym ninja. Yes.
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 Lies stands for limited idea entertained. And when you think about it, it's not necessarily the truth that you have a horrible memory, but this is an idea that you choose to get energy and that you're entertaining, in that moment. Motivation is another one of those things where I think there are some lies around motivation. For example, some people believe that motivation, you have to be motivated for something, you have to enjoy it. And I love to bring joy to the things that I want to do, but I grew up in the Northeast. I don't like cold at all. I really, really dislike cold, but every morning I will take a cold shower, or I will take an ice bath, and I'm motivated. I never miss a day, but I don't enjoy it. And so, that would be a lie in my mind. I know a lot of people who work out and they do it every single day, but they don't necessarily find a lot of pleasure in it. I would say always, if you can bring joy to it, do it. Give yourself that gift. But people still can be motivated and not necessarily want to do that action. And I think it's very important also to step out thinking, when I'm thinking about motivation, is that I believe that a lot of the treasure that we seek is hidden in the tasks or the actions that we're avoiding. Meaning that it's very uncomfortable to have that conversation or
Yes.
to do that thing. And that's part of, you and I geek out about the human brain all the time. It's really wired for survival and not to be uncomfortable, and rather be safe, away from perceived threat. Which is an interesting conversation to have, during this times of where sometimes our mind gets hijacked, or our amygdala gets hijacked by fear or
By
perceived threat
fear.
out
Yes.
there.
Mhm.
And and that also, it's an epidemic, right? This virus of the mind, the virus of fear that gets passed on. But going back to motivation, for me, it comes down to three components, and there's a formula for motivation. And very simply, for me, it's P times E times S3. And very simply, for me, motivation comes down to, first, purpose, having a reason. Or when you define purpose, I'm thinking about having a reason for something. And it doesn't have to be your life purpose. It could be if you could tie it into that, your motivation, your drive. But I mean having a purpose. So I don't necessarily love taking cold showers, but I have a real reason and purpose for doing so. And
Yes.
I allow myself to feel those benefits also as well. Whether it's, for me, it's a big nervous system reset. I feel amazing, afterwards. So I just focus on that and I allow myself to feel it. Once you have a reason, for example, remembering names, having a reason to remember someone's name. A lot of people don't learn as fast as they could because they're not connected to the relevancy or the rewards that come from doing so. They might know it intellectually, but they don't allow themselves to feel that. And so for me, remembering people's names is become more of my identity, because I know what it feels like when you forget somebody's name over and over again and you're asking for it, or you call someone by the wrong name, or I know how it feels when people forget my name, right? So I
Yes.
allow myself to feel that, which gives me a real reason. And over time, I get hardwired to remember names because I'm very motivated, starting with reason. Now, for me, I go through these thought experiments where and you can appreciate this. It's just, I'm looking at the formula. I'm saying, okay, if somebody just has a big enough reason, are they always motivated? And I'm asking myself the opposite. In what cases are they not motivated, even when they have a reason? And then I'm thinking, well, maybe somebody wants to read, they want to exercise every single day, and they have reasons. They know who's. And one of my questions that I ask to get motivated and find my purpose is who's counting on me to be healthy, who's counting on me to show up, because I realized that I would do a lot more for other people sometimes than I'll do for myself, and I'll really feel that. But if you're not exercising or reading that book every day, we know what to do, but we're not doing what we know, then I feel like one of the things that could be missing is the E, which is energy. So maybe you're not working out because you just had a really bad night's sleep the night before, or maybe you're not reading. Maybe your motivation, you want to be able to read more, read a book a week, right? Leaders are readers, and you have the reason, but you don't have the energy because you ate like all this processed food, and you're in a food coma, and you can't get yourself motivated because of those reasons, because you're energy depleted. And again, I feel like you don't have motivation or you don't have energy. These are things that we do. And so in the book, I talk about things that you and I have talked about to be able to generate more energy. Everything from the foods we eat to managing our stress to be able to optimize our sleep. And so we did a whole section on energy. And then my mind goes, okay, you have the reasons, right, the purpose, and you have energy. Is there any case where you won't do the action, where you don't fulfill on that motivation? And I said, yes, somebody could have a reason. They could have boundless, sustainable energy also as well, and still not act, because that thing that they want to be motivated to do is just too big in their head, or it's unclear, or it's
Right.
confusing. And a
Right.
confused mind doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
It just freezes, right? And so maybe you want to be motivated to start a business, or you want to be motivated to, have this perfect body, or you're motivated to have this amazing relationship. But that's way too big. And so S3 stands for small, simple step. Small, simple step. Like once you have the reason and you have energy, what's the smallest, simplest step you could take to make progress towards that goal? And the question I would ask is, what is one thing you could do so small that you can't fail? And really, motivation comes down to energy management, where having a purpose gives you energy for something. Having energy, like mental energy, gives you, obviously, providing vitality for you. And then finally, if you break it down into small, simple steps, then that requires very little effort. It requires very little energy. And so I feel like if you had all three of those things for anything, whether it's reading a book a week or exercising or anything that would help you make progress, then you'll have sustainable motivation. It's not something you have to hype yourself up to. It's something that it happens more organically and naturally. So in that chapter, in that section, what we focus on small, tiny habits, as Dr. BJ Fogg has talked about,
Mm-hmm.
who heads Stanford University behavioral psychology lab, and breaking it down in the smallest pieces. So maybe you want to read a book a week, but maybe that small, simple step is just opening the book, or reading one sentence, or flossing one tooth, or putting on your running shoes. Really, really tiny steps. So that's motivation. And then the final M in the model are your methods for doing so. So you could be stuck in that box, meaning that maybe you have this limitless mindset. Anything is possible, and you're capable of achieving it. Maybe you could even be motivated. You have drive, you have purpose, you have energy, and everything, but you don't know what to do because you're lacking the methods. The method is the actual process. And so small, simple steps are like these small, little, tiny incremental things. Method is the full out strategy for getting there. And so maybe you have this mindset that you can read a book a week, and you think it's possible because you know it's been done and other people could do it and you could do it, and maybe you're motivated to do it, but your method for reading something is like how we learned back in school. It constitutes regression and back skipping and sub-vocalization, saying the words to yourself so it slows you down. You're using antiquated methods. Or maybe it's building a business and you have the limitless mindset, limitless motivation, but the methods you're using are just old marketing tactics
Right.
or management. You're still gonna be stuck in that box. Now, the beauty of how what I love about this model is it's very elegant, meaning that it's an explanatory schema for when we're falling short or we're not making progress, because it's a self-evaluation tool where you could go, okay, I'm not making progress in this area towards this goal. Is it in my mindset? Do I have a belief that's holding me back? Do I not believe I deserve it? Or is it, am I not taking regular sustainable action because I don't have the motivation and drive? Or am I just using methods that aren't going to get me where I need to go because they're either antiquated or they're just false? Um, Now, when you're looking at the Venn diagram, which kind of looks like, you can imagine two circles, there's three circles, like kind of like a Mickey Mouse, like two ears and the head and the face,
That's
where
exactly what it looks like. That's
where,
exactly it.
where the Mickey Mouse model,
Yeah.
um, where mindset and motivation cross over, and there's just shared space. You have inspiration, meaning that, and these words are very telling, right? There are books on just mindset. There's a book called Mindset. There's books just on motivation, and when they cross over, I'm going to give everyone three eyes. You have inspiration, right? And they're inspirational speakers, and they're inspirational things on videos on Instagram, which is wonderful. But you can be inspired and still not do something because you don't know what to do. Um, and where you have mindset crossover with methods, you have the mindset that anything is possible, and you know what to do, and that's ideation because you're still not doing it. It stays in your head because you're not motivated because you're lacking the motivation circle, right? And then finally, if you have motivation and you have methods, then you have implementation, right? If you're motivated to do something and you know what to do, you have implementation, but you're still stuck in that box because the mindset is missing, meaning that you might not believe it's possible for you. You might be motivated, but still not get the results, or you might get a result that's subpar to what you feel you deserve, right? Maybe you feel like you don't deserve to be able to enjoy that relationship or enjoy that health, or maybe you don't believe it's possible for yourself. And now when all three of them intersect, I'll give everyone a fourth eye, which is integration.
Mhm.
Integration is that limitless state. That is the state where it is just who you are. And I feel like there's some areas of our life where we step into that state, or maybe even live in that state in certain areas of our life. And my goal with this model not only is an explanatory schema for explaining, and takes the judgment out also, because it allows you to have agency back instead of as opposed to being a force that is just how things are, that it's fixed. It also provides you with a learning tool, because if you want to model genius, if somebody is, and I'm not talking about IQ, but somebody who's successful at the endeavor that you aspire for, you could use it as a framework for asking, what is this person's mindset? What are their primary beliefs they have around this activity, around this goal, around what they deserve, or what is their going to motivation? What is their, asking them questions like, what is their purpose? What is their drive? How do they get that? Where's their focus? Or what are they doing to optimize their energy every single day so they have vitality to have sustainable motivation? Or what are the small, simple steps that they're executing? Where's their starting point? In terms of getting traction to something, or looking at the actual process themselves, the actual methods. So it allows you to go and look at somebody and then role model genius, because I believe genius leaves clues in these three areas. Like my message for everybody who's listening to this is is stop shrinking your dreams to fit like your current situation or your current reality. What you want to do, instead of shrinking your dreams to meet your current situation, is you want to expand your mindset, your motivation, and your methodology, your methods, to be able to meet your dreams, to be able to meet your destiny, if you will.
The book is about learning, but what we're really talking about is self-actualization, which is what everybody wants. Everybody wants to just feel like themselves. They want to be cool with the skin that they're in.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really just a lifelong endeavor that most of us, if you're awake and you're conscious to that path, it's about subtraction, right? It's about taking the limits off that you have accepted from mothers, fathers, teachers, preachers, from the people that you have grown up with, and their frameworks and their mindsets. So I love this book because it's really at the end of the day, that's what we want. We want to feel good. I mean, and we want to, I love what you just said about around genius, and we'll talk about this as we dissect each individual piece. But one of the things that I have come to accept around genius is you don't dream about things that are not meant for you. You
Mm,
know, like I have never dreamt about becoming a physicist or a mechanical engineer, you know, because that's just not where my genius is. And to your point around genius leaves clues, if you have the courage to listen to your genius, you will never stray from where you are supposed to go. So I just love what you said. So, all right, let's talk about learning because you and again, I know I'm singing your praises, and I will continue to do so because I just enjoyed this book so much. You do what any great coach does: is you bring the horse to the water. You say, "Here's the water," and I'm gonna, you allow the reader to actively engage in the drinking part of it. So you start off by in the book talking about learning and setting up the best environment, both emotionally and physically, for learning through an acronym that you call or that you name FASTER. So
mhm.
can we look at that for a moment and why that's so important before we even start talking about
Sure.
before we even like deconstruct what mindset is, what motivation is. Let's talk about FASTER, and then maybe we can parse that with the ants, and you've already talked about the lies and the BS as well.
Of course. So I believe that this book really was a book just on methods initially. It was a book on tactics and strategies on how to do all these things to be able to read faster and learn languages and words and remember names and improve your focus. And they were based on these 5 areas of meta learning. But I realized that a lot of people know what to do, but they don't do what they know, right? That common sense, as we talked about, is not always common practice, and what keeps people from actually doing the things that they should be doing. And part of it is as we open up the book, I want people to get the most out of the book. So we teach them this faster method as a way to apply towards learning anything, whether it's in a book or it's in a podcast format like this, or they're sitting with a college professor or an educator, simple things that they could do. So the really quickly, and this might be testing everyone's focus if you could hear the
Yes.
background noise. It's funny because distraction is a muscle, but so is focus.
Yes.
So this is a great opportunity again to learn under real conditions, because there's always rings, pings, dings that are challenging our focus, our level of concentration. So it's a great opportunity to build some mental muscle around it. So faster as an acronym, the F to learn anything subject faster, and no one wants to learn a subject slower, right? The F stands for forget. And you're like, Jim, you're the memory guy. Why are you talking about forgetting? But I feel like one of the things that keeps us from learning faster is just this idea that we already know something. That what keeps us from a level of capability and skill and expertise is saying to ourselves, oh, I've learned this already. And what I find is the people who are world class, they get really good at the fundamentals. They love the fundamentals. They love the basics. And so one of the basics, the ideas here is forget what you already temporarily, what you know about a subject, so you're open to something brand new. I mean, the metaphor I use is about your mind is like a parachute. It only works when it's open. But this is like Zen, where you're coming from a beginner's mind and you're very open to new ideas, because a lot of people, they don't learn because they feel like they already know something, and that keeps them
Mhm.
stuck. They say they have 20 years of experience in this. What can I learn? Anything that's new. But when you dissect it, you realize that they learned this 20 years ago, and all they've done is repeat that 20 times. So it's not really 20 years of experience if it's static and there's no growth that's there. I would also
It's 1 year repeated 20 times. Yeah.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
it's just a reminder to everybody who's listening that there's some area that we maybe fall, trapped in that area. So the other thing you want to forget, that would help you to learn faster, is just forget about what's going on in your environment, and the external environment, and also the internal environment. It's very difficult to maintain your focus in multiple places, right? And when we're talking about cognitive multitasking, and if we're always switching from one thing to another, we're not going to learn with a level of fidelity, accuracy, acumen when we're distracted. So if something comes in your mind, do the best you can, obviously, to manage your environment. But if something comes in your mind, like, oh, I have to pick up the kid, I have to do this, just write it down, because unconsciously, I feel like it gives people permission to just release it, they know it's captured, and then you could be fully present. Because when we're distracted, we learn slower. And then finally, I would say, forget about what you believe is possible. And that's not always easy, right? But having an open mind is also believing that you can do this in a way that could be absolutely extraordinary. So that's really the F. The A, that's my dog in the background too. I don't know if you can pick that up on the microphone. Um, the A stands for active, that if you want to be a faster learner, you need to treat learning as a real activity where you're rolling up your sleeves and you're getting fully involved. That learning, we are taught back in school unconsciously, it's just you sitting there quietly consuming information. And we know the human brain doesn't learn best through consumption. It learns through creativity, through creation, and making things your own, making it personally meaningful for you. And learning is not a spectator sport. You have to get involved. And so always asking questions like, how can I be more active in this process, where learning is not happening to me, I'm actually actively engaged in the process. Because the more of your nervous system that comes to bear, the more you're going to ingrain it and encode it, and more likely to be able to apply it. So it could be something simple like asking questions. And I talk about the 3 key questions that take knowledge and turn them into power. These are the questions I obsess about, and I would offer them to you, the listener, to entertain while we're having this conversation. Number 1, how can I use this? I'm so obsessed with that information, that question, because I start seeing answers all the time. I come up with these creative answers of how the different ways I could use this when I'm reading a book, whether it's on business or the brain or anything I'm interested in. I'm always asking, how can I use this? How can I apply this? Otherwise, it just stays like a theory or an idea and nothing changes. The second question I ask all the time to make it more active is this question, why must I use this? And that's really tapping into the motivation part of it. So the first question is part of my mindset, the creative ideas of all the ways I could apply this and benefit from it. And then the second question is why must I use this? What are all the rewards that come from applying it? And then finally, the third question, to make it more active, as you're taking notes or as you're listening, is when will I use this? Because I find that one of the most powerful productivity and performance tools we have are our calendars. And we know this, but a reminder to everyone who's listening to this is, if it's not in your schedule, we know there's a good chance that it's not going to get done. And we schedule things like, for the kids, or we schedule things for work or meeting with that investor or that potential client, but we don't schedule sometimes the things like our own personal growth, or where we're going to, and if it doesn't happen, if you don't schedule it, it's the last thing to happen, even if it does happen. That's why a lot of people, they don't work out, because the day, escaped them, they'll say, and then they have no energy at the end of the day, and that's what gets, lost in the mix. And so active is asking those 3 questions. Active could be taking notes, which we talk about in the book, active note-taking, whole brain note-taking, because we know there's a learning curve, but we also know there's a forgetting curve also as well. And that's a challenge that, research suggests that when you learn or exposed to something once, that within 48 hours, up to 80% of it can just be lost. And we've all had that experience where we study something and then a couple of days later, we don't retain as much. So taking notes is a great way of capturing it until you can encode and store it using, the largest chapter in the book is the chapter on memory, because I feel like if you can't remember all this, then nothing's going to happen either. And so that's the A. And then going fast forward through this really quickly, the S is state, which you and I have talked about in detail, meaning that the state you learn something in is a state that you're also going to encode it and also be as excited to apply it also as well. That all learning is state dependent, and we always have control over how we feel about something. And by adding emotion to information, it makes it more memorable. right? When we add emotion to information, it becomes almost unforgettable. And we all have a song or a fragrance or a food that can just bring it back all these memories, right? So control our state. And two ways, and we talk a lot about state control and state management in the book, is just through our physiology and our psychology. You know, the words and our thoughts are the language, let's say, of the mind. The feelings that we have are the language of the body, and we can control our body, we can control our thoughts, but sometimes we're on this default where we just kind of go and we're running these past scripts and these past habits of the mind, if you will. And so I think everybody who's listening right now can rate themselves on a scale of 0 to 10. You know, how much energy do you have? What's your level of connection or your level of motivation right now? And then you can play this thought experiment saying, okay, if it's a 5, how do I make this a 7 in our mind? Just like a little mind game that we play with ourselves. And then think of fun ways of saying, okay, well, if I think about it this way, or if I pull my shoulders back this way, or if I just play some music or do this, I just get more engaged, right? And so that part of state management. The T in faster stands for teach. And if you want to learn anything faster, one of the benefits that accelerates my learning with anything is I learn with the intention of asking, like, if I had a fourth question, it'd be, how do I teach this to somebody else? I'm like obsessed with that because as a teacher, as a coach, I'm always wanting, I learned something, number one, to benefit myself, but number two, to benefit other people. And so I'm very driven to learn something specifically so that I could teach it to other people, because I feel like, and which is one of the motivations for this book. It's like you learn it for yourself. And I wrote this book for the 18-year-old version of me that was struggling and suffering and, had learning challenges and was, had trouble motivating themselves and doing all these things. And, but when I think about like just having it for myself, I was like, shame on me if somebody is suffering or struggling with overload or distraction or self-worth or procrastination, and I don't share this with somebody. So learn to
Right.
teach. And everyone knows if they have to listen to this podcast over again and you think of somebody that you love that you wish was listening with you, but but you go through it again with the intention of teaching that person or giving like a little, talk, like a little TED talk on Monday to your team about it, you would learn it with such better focus, right? You would learn it and really ingrain it. And the words you would use to explain it would be your own words, not the words necessarily from that expert. It would be personal to you. And so learn with the intention of teaching it to somebody else. And that'll increase your speed and velocity of learning a subject or skill. And then finally, the E and the R, when we're talking about this faster, the E is to enter. And what am I entering? I'm going back to my schedule. I'm putting it on, like I'm scheduling my learning. A lot of people want to read every day, but they're not scheduling that reading time or that meditation time or that journaling time. It's extremely, extremely important. Sorry, Steph. Could you hold on a second?
Sure.
Shoot. Oh, I hate to do this. Give me one moment.
Sure. No problem.
Okay.
Recording again, and I just made a note of the time so we can just
Okay.
cut this out. Everything is okay?
Yeah. Yes. Um,
So we got to the end of faster.
yeah.
We did it.
We have to do the R still, so I could just do it. So I'll do the pickup here. And whoever's edited this, thank you for being so awesome and helping
God
us.
damn you, coronavirus. Yes.
Exactly.
Okay. All
right. So the E is enter it into your calendar. And finally, the R in faster is review. Review, meaning that in order to be able to mitigate the forgetting curve, what you do is you take time after every session. Maybe it's a chapter of a book. For example, in this book, we do like a review at the end where you have that spaced repetition and that spaced review. And having that interval in between allows you to consolidate the information a lot better and take it from your short term and help consolidate to long-term memory. And so that review is very important. So you don't just want to learn it once, you want to be able to pick it up again maybe the day after and just review it, your notes. And so it becomes very ingrained and functional.
And I think that I like that you started off with this in the book because it is such a critical step before you engage in learning a new language or a new skill or learning how to learn. It's important that you awaken and attune to the impact that these elements, whether it's a subconscious mind, if you're not in the right state and you already have these limiting beliefs around yourself, because we might be more inclined to self-sabotage. We might not enter the review time in our
Sure.
calendar. We may not take the time to do the things that we know we should be doing. And if with your permission, I just want to read this excerpt that you wrote around the inner critic in your book. May I read this paragraph? The inner critic isn't harmless. It inhibits you, it limits you, and it stops you from pursuing the life you truly want to live. It robs you of peace of mind and emotional well being. And if left unchecked long enough, it can even lead to serious mental health problems like depression and anxiety. Now, it would be reasonable to say that this is a quality of life issue as well. So, yes, we should be applying this when we are trying to better ourselves, but it is also so important to understand when the inner critic is at play, right? When it shows up in your life. And we talked a lot about this in our first conversation. So we can, for the listener, episode 2 is the one you want to review here. But I was having a conversation with Dr. Kelly Brogan, who I
Mm.
know you know. Her episode is coming out after yours, but she was talking about this inner child as being this like little kid in the back seat who's like screaming, "Go faster, turn left, not there," and our job as an adult is to be like, being in the driver's seat and turning back and being like, "Okay, sweetie, I know you're scared. I got it, but mama knows where she's going, we got this. We can do this together." And, in a neuroscience, I guess if we're talking about this in the context of neuroscience, this will be like frontal lobe regulation, where you are emotionally regulating some of the more primitive areas, uh, or limbic centers really, in your brain. So I'm interested, to know from you in terms of what has been for you a useful technique, either for you or your students, in terms of, so we've talked about faster, but when
Right.
we talk about reframing your BS, right? Reframing what you
Right.
call your BS or your belief systems. What has been useful strategies or techniques that you yourself have employed, or that you've noticed that your students have undergone?
Absolutely. So I believe that these beliefs, again, Henry Ford said, if you believe you can or believe you can't, either way, you're right. And all behavior is belief driven. It's kind of like this self talk. If we talk about the brain as like a supercomputer, your self talk is the program it will run. So if you tell yourself you're not good at remembering people's names, you won't remember the name of the next person you meet because you program your supercomputer not to. I believe that if people truly understood and I could appreciate how powerful their mind is, they wouldn't say or think something they didn't want to be true. And that's not to say you have one negative thought and your life is ruined any more than eating that one junk food that ruined your life, but it's the consistency of it. And we know that, neurons that fire together, they wire together, and we can get in this habit. And so the first place to start, I would recommend, is just the self-awareness, knowing that it's there. It's really hard to change something if you're not aware that it's there and you're not conscious or mindful of it. And that's part of this exercise is a big journey of self-awareness about our habits. Our habits are our thoughts. Even self-awareness about the methods. When we go into the methods, is repetition and just repeat learning, something, just, is that really the best way of learning, remembering something? Or critical thinking. Most people don't have a strategy for solving problems or decision making. So we have a lot of methods for that, but they're not even aware that they have a preset way of doing it and one way of looking at a problem. So I would say at a meta level, self-awareness is a superpower for everybody. I
Oh
also
yeah.
think talking about state management is that, and by the way, when I'm talking about state, like if you look at the faster model, like that, those handful of 6 things, if everyone did the opposite, what would happen? If you didn't forget about your limitations, if you didn't forget about, the things that you know about a subject, how are you going to learn something new? Or if you're the opposite of active and just passive, how's that learning experience? Or if your state is zero or boredom, how well are you going to learn? Or if you're learning just, for to learn for yourself as opposed to teaching it to somebody else, what's the ramifications of that? If you're not putting in your calendar, entering in your calendar, what'll happen there? Or if you're not reviewing the material, what'll happen? So the opposite is also true. But the self-awareness, coming back to this talk, part of it is going back to the S, is state, is this curiosity mindset. Meaning, I think one of the best ways of changing limiting beliefs, or these lies, limited idea entertain, or BS, these belief systems, is having the curiosity to go back and saying, where did this come from? Is this something that's real, or is this something that I'm currently entertaining? Or asking yourself a question: is it possible this is not true? And including doubt in there about something, around something that you inherently have knowledge and wisdom that it's not getting you the result that you want. Is it really true that I have a horrible memory? And just really evaluating that, meaning that, are there times where I could prove, do I have evidence saying that the opposite, where I do have a great memory? Are there times where I remember certain things, and be able to build evidence and a case for the opposite? I also think that besides self-awareness and having curiosity, and part of the curiosity leads to this, which is your own research. In the book, we talk about these lies of learning, and then I present research to counter some of these lies, whether it's, a fixed mindset, or IQ and intelligence is something, that we talk, the myths, if you will, that we introduce in the book. And then we go into research telling people, what science is saying,
Mm-hmm.
is more accurate. And then we take through a process where we define what the lie is. We give them the evidence to counter that, and then we introduce a new belief into the fold that's more empowering. That usually is the opposite of what's holding them back. That's keeping it in their own mind. But the self-awareness, I would start there, and that's what comes up when we meditate. That comes up when we create some white space in our life, where we could actually sit down and just reflect and think, and you use some critical thinking and some reasoning and analysis, things that we teach in later chapters. Also, journaling is a wonderful way to be able to capture your current thoughts, like a snapshot of your mood. And I like that also because it's interesting for me, because I have journals, on my shelf from years ago. And I get to go back 5 years or 6 years and read not only what was going on in my life, but also how I felt about certain things, and my mindset about the world, my mindset of what are my capabilities, my beliefs and my values. And I think big part of life is just knowing yourself, having the curiosity to know yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
then also, once you're getting to know yourself, having the courage to also be yourself, which is a total different set of skills.
Let's talk about a few of those lies. We don't have to go. I know you outlined 7 of them, and we can certainly do that. But let's just some of the really common lies that we either adopt from society or from the people around us around learning. So you mentioned one around this: intelligence is fixed, like this fixed versus growth mindset. And some of that is really driven from, we just look at one measure of intelligence, which is the IQ, or the IQ test. So
Right.
can you maybe talk a little bit about that, and we can go into some of the other ones that you feel are very common
Sure.
lies that people tell themselves or they adopt?
I think back in school, a lot of this was imprinted on us, where we evaluated, like, we didn't do well on a standardized test, like the SATs or something like that, which only tests for maybe verbal and mathematical. But we know that there's, multiple forms of intelligence, or genius. And we know two things: that it's not fixed, like a lot of people assume that you take an IQ test when you're 8 years old, and that's the same number, that's your number till you're 88 years old.
Right.
it's said. It also means that what the evidence is suggesting in studies is that there's not just one form of intelligence. So intelligence is not fixed; it can be improved. Because I could, in the book, we give tactics on how to improve all these areas of intelligence. And there's not just one or two; there's multiple forms. So another form of intelligence that we talk about in the thinking chapter are things like interpersonal intelligence, like people who are just great with people. And you think about the careers of people that would fall under that category, whether they're coaches, whether they're teachers, could be a therapist. People have great interpersonal connections. Maybe they could be politicians, they could be salespeople. There's also intrapersonal intelligence, where interpersonal is self to others, intrapersonal is self to self.
Mm-hmm.
People who really are attuned to their own psychology, they have a high genius of self-awareness, and they have a deep understanding of the human condition, and those could express themselves in careers like maybe therapists, right? People who understand, are philosophers. People understand, individuals. But then also you have musical intelligence, right? You have body kinesthetic intelligence. You have the great athletes and the great dancers, martial artists, Cirque du Soleil. All of these people.
Serena.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
individuals who just really stand out in
Yeah.
all different categories. And some people are extraordinary in multiple forms of intelligence, and I really do not believe that genius is born. I think it's built. And I make a case for it in the actual book. It's one of the myths that genius can be built. It can be trained in these areas, because in the book we document different things you could do to elevate your intelligence in those areas,
Mm.
right? And so you have visual spatial intelligence. And these are your great graphic artists, the great architects, right? The people who are amazing, to be able to lay out. They have this amazing interior designers, the feel for the aesthetics, and the visual arts. So that's a big one, because I feel like sometimes in school you're tested for certain subjects, and 10% of people maybe got A's, 10% got B's, but like the 80% of most of us, it was like kind of like we were falling short of school, as opposed to school falling short for
For
us.
us, yes.
And so those kind of things. Another myth or lie is just one we introduced in the beginning of this conversation, is that knowledge is power. And I just want to reiterate that knowledge at best is potential power. Somebody knowing something, it doesn't make you any better off than somebody who doesn't know it, unless you're taking action. So we make a big case for that knowledge, and true understanding is your ability to act on this knowledge and turn into power. There's another myth that you and we've discussed, is that you only use 10% of your brain.
This
Uh,
is a really funny one to me. I don't know where this came from. And you document in the book, the etiology of it, but it's always been a funny one for me to think that we only use 10% of our brains. I'd love
right.
for you to
And, and
comment on this.
and the reason why I just brought that one up, because that was a late addition to it, is just I realized that having that myth that we're only using 10%, it holds us back, because it means like hey, we have a finite amount of those resources. And what I realize is it's kind of silly to say you use 10% of your brain. That's like I only use 10% of my body, right? It's like
Right.
we use all of our body, which is obviously our brain is part of our body, but some people use it more efficiently and more effectively than others. Some people's bodies they're just more fit because they've been trained, and so when they're under physical stress, like they're hiking up a mountain or something, they don't have to exert the same amount of force or energy as somebody who is not trained, but they're still using their whole body, if you will. And I find the same when people need to learn. They're using, they can use all their brain, but some people are just more mentally fit, so they get through that reading or that listening or that writing a lot more effectively, because they have strategies, they have skills. Like any sport, you have the strategies that are there, and then those people are also physically and mentally fit. And the same goes for someone having great focus. Same for people who seem to be able to solve every problem on their own, because they've built those muscles and they have strategies. The challenge is a lot of those strategies are unconscious, because a lot of genius, and there are people who are extraordinary in certain areas, but they're not consciously aware of how they're doing it, because they picked it up maybe at an early age, and they're unconsciously confident. They're just doing it as if it's second nature, but they're not consciously aware of how they're doing it. So it's really hard for them to teach somebody else or show their kids how they're doing it, because they take it for granted because it's just how they read, or it's just how they solve problems. And part of this book is an owner's manual for your brain, to show people the method behind what looks like magic, that the magic people are creating. There's always a method behind it.
Yeah, and this idea around genius is born, that's one of the myths that you talk about. And it was a really, when I was reflecting on the content that you were laying out, I was thinking to myself, this is 100% true. Like the first day of my practice, when I, board certified, ready to practice with my patients, the first patient I treated, I mean, God bless her, was very different in terms of, the last patient that I treated when I decided to, close my, like that was a 16-year span, multiple patients every day, 5 days a week for 16 years. I mean,
Yeah,
the you could make the argument that uh, it is it is the argument that it is the consistent and persistent application of the framework over time that leads to the mastery. That is, that people will say, "Wow, that's genius," or "Look, he was an overnight success," or whatever it is. And I always, tongue in cheek, say, "Well, that's why doctors call it a practice." We don't call it a perfect. We have a practice because we are continuously practicing our craft. It is the art and science of, in
yeah,
my case, chiropractic or medicine or nursing or whatever it is.
yeah. There's
So,
there's a story I put in there, like a little anecdote about a kingdom, and you have the king there, and there's this person who performs magic in front of the king, and the king's like, this man is amazing. This guy is an absolute genius, and his counselor was like, here, sire, this is wild. This looks amazing, and this man is absolutely extraordinary. Genius is built. It's not born, because the king was saying that this guy was born with such incredible gifts and such an amazing talent. Was born with this incredible skill, right? And the king was so offended by that comment from the counselor, and he was like, "You're absolutely wrong. Genius. This genius was born. He was born. He was born this way." And to teach the counselor a lesson, he locked him in the basement, right, in like this prison basement area. And he said, to keep you company, so you're not lonely, I'm going to give you two more of your kind, two little swine, two little like piglets, if you will, two little baby pigs. And the counselor, wanting to utilize his time, he would go up and down the stairs, just keep himself busy holding each of these little piglets every single day, as a form of exercise and engagement. And eventually these piglets grew into these big pigs, these big boars, if you will. And he was doing it, and the counselor just got extremely like strong. I mean, rugged strength of a human being. And one day the king says, like, I wonder where that counselor is. He just had this random thought, all this time, I wonder how he's doing. I wonder if he learned his lesson. And he calls for him, and the counselor shows up, and he is just like this perfect specimen, physical specimen. And the king's like, "Oh my God, this guy, he's born with these incredible genetics and these incredible gifts." And what does the counselor say? He says the same exact thing as he said before. He's like, "Genius is not born; it is built through daily," exactly what you said, daily, consistent, persistent action. Because I believe consistency compounds. That little by little, a little becomes a whole lot.
yeah.
And throughout the book, we put dozens upon dozens of these small, simple steps, like that counselor was taking on the stairs, holding the pigs, and they're very simple, and anyone can do it in less than 60 seconds. But those are the S3s throughout the entire, we call them quick starts. Throughout the entire book, I'll teach a lesson, and I'm just saying, hey, in 30 seconds, 60 seconds, I want you to apply this. And they're small little steps. So when people get through this hero's journey, by the end, they've accumulated so much strength, so much power, so much discipline in taking action, that they've completely transformed.
Let's talk about the distinction between purpose and passion. I loved this part of the book. So this is under the category of motivation. So we've been talking about the mindset arm, and
Yeah.
talking about purpose and passion would fall under the motivation uh, arm, how would you, because those two words I find are used interchangeably, like find your purpose, that's your passion. And I
Yeah,
think that there's a muddling of meanings, and I like the way that you outline the definition. So can you contrast those for the listener?
absolutely. So, for to keep it simple for me, and this is just my take on it. Certain words sometimes are used interchangeably, as you mentioned. My little pet peeves I have about things like, an example I use, like nice and kindness. It's sometimes people say kind and nice the same, but they mean the difference is very distinguished for me. Like somebody could treat you very nice at the grocery store, but it doesn't mean they care about you. For me, kindness comes from a place of caring. You're going out of your way to help, to be able to support, to cheerlead somebody. Where nice could be placating, right? And so these little words. And so passion and purpose, for me, for example, passion is very simplified for me. Is just passion is what lights you up. And I don't think it's just you're limited to one passion. I feel like that you could be passionate about a lot of things. I also think that a lot of people are trying to find this, but it's passion could also be built over time. That part of being a human being, in this lifetime, that we have this lifetime to be able to kind of figure things out, is to introduce yourself to novelty, especially for your kids. Introduce them to enough novelty and then see what they get excited about. When people are afraid, though, sometimes adults, we don't want to act on it, meaning we're afraid of how we're going to look or something, like trying new things. I always recommend people try something at least 3 times, just as a kind of a rule. Try something that, if you're being called to something, like try it, number one, to just get over your fear of it. Try it, number two, to get decently good at it. Try it again to see if you are passionate about it or if you do enjoy it and like it. So passions, you can have multiple passions, and it's something that lights you up. For me, my passion is learning, right? I just love to learn. Purpose, though, where passion is what lights you up, purpose, in my mind, how I filter it, is what lights other people up. How do you, so for me, I could use my passion, which is learning, and I could teach other people how to learn, and that allows me to take my passion and merge it with my purpose, which is helping other people with their actual learning. And I also feel like that people try to find these things. It's kind of um, like dating or relationships. It's you expose yourself to different people, different novelties. You get to know what values you have and how you connect with people, and then it's built over time, right? And so you have to build it every single day, like you would a relationship. And so when I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about what lights me up as my passion, and then my purpose is how I could take it potentially to light somebody else up. Simple terms.
And I like this because, again, when you get back to this idea of genius leaves clues, you've shared your story to the Better podcast listenership before, where you've talked about you were the guy with the broken brain and you were supposed to do this project and you were so excited. And then the teacher threw you this curveball and said, well, you're actually going to public speak now. You're going to present to the
Yeah.
class. And now that's what you do. you you
Yeah.
public speak and you teach about brains, which sometimes I get the question a lot. Well, how do you figure it out? Like, how do you figure out what your purpose is? How do you figure out what your passion is? And sometimes it's your deepest sensitivity.
Mm,
It's where you've struggled the most in your life, and that this idea around genius leaves clues, or I'm going to misquote it, but the Rumi quote where it's like the wound is where the light enters. I'm paraphrasing, but it's something like that. For if you're listening to this and you're saying, well, it makes sense. I mean, Jim Kwik, look who he is. He's the celebrity memory coach. He speaks on all these big stages, but it wasn't like that for you. I mean, this was something that was petrifying and terrifying for you to the point where you ran away from it,
yeah.
right? So,
I mean, it's not just that I was introverted, and my is the culture that I was in also as well, with my family. But when I had my accident and I couldn't do these things. I became painfully shy. So my superpowers growing up, if you feel like you're broken, you don't feel like you have a lot to offer other people. So my my ability to be able to shrink and not be seen was incredibly honed, because I didn't want to be called on in class, and I'd sit all the way in the back if I could, and I would always compress myself because I didn't want to take up a lot of space. And superpowers really literally was shrinking and becoming invisible. And doing that public speaking, when I literally did the book report, I spent a good weeks and weeks and working at it. And the day it was due, my dad had it professionally bound for me. I was like, it was like symbolized something very special, that it was like my value, that I could really do this. I could accomplish something because I was failing out of high school English, and that was my way of getting extra credit so I could pass.
Mm-hmm.
And when the teacher threw me that curveball and said, come up front and speak on it, I was so terrified. I couldn't even breathe. My heart was like out of my chest. I just lied and said I didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could see her disappointment in her face. And then when the class cleared and the teacher left, I remember leaving, and I took that book report out of my backpack and I just threw it in the trash. And it felt like, I was also throwing away my potential, or my worth, if you will. And this sounds kind of traumatic, but when you're that age and you've just never amounted to a lot, or was able to had all these limits that in these areas, then it became like part of my identity, and that's what I was integrating. But it's interesting how difficult times, they could define you, they could diminish you, or they could develop you. That sometimes adversity is an advantage. That if I look back on my life, the things that I was most embarrassed about, my family, they immigrated here. My dad was 13 years old and didn't speak the language. Both his parents had passed away. Couldn't afford to feed him. Came here to live with aunt and uncle. We lived in the back of a laundromat that my mom worked at. I mean, it was there wasn't a lot of resources, education, context, money, or anything else like that. But I really think that adversity could be an advantage, because things that I was most ashamed of growing up as a kid, like these challenges and the head injury or the public speaking, or like not having a lot, like I'm most proud of now. So it's kind of interesting to come on the other side of that, and that your struggles can lead to strengths. And ultimately, like I opened the book, kind of early on with this quote from a French philosopher that says that life is the C between the B and the D. Life is the C between the B and the D. And people are thinking I'm speaking in tongues or code. The B stands for birth, the D stands for death, and C stands for choice. And that's really what life is. That's what happiness is. It's like the sum total of all the choices we've made up to this point, has given us the life that we have. And the message of the book is, how conscious are you of these choices, of these beliefs, of what motivates you, of what you're putting in your body, of how you're sleeping, of how you're reading or learning or thinking about things. And maybe there potentially could be a better way. And that's why I love the title of your podcast so much. I was jealous. I was really happy for you, and I was also jealous, because that's my dominant question: how do I make this better?
Yeah.
Growing up with a lot of kind of lack, I was always in comparison, even before social media. I was like, how come that person is so? I'm working so much harder studying, and that person's doing better. And I was like, how do I do this better? And how do I do this better? And you ask that question enough, and you come up with some answers.
Yeah. And you and I resonate on so many different wavelengths, because I know the book is called Limitless. That is one of my, when I was starting the new year, Limitless was one of my, I have 5 words that I want to channel every single day. So it's my 5 words are glamorous, limitless, luminous, strength, and confidence. So
I
I
love
was thrilled, you and I are very, very similar. So you are asking how to be better, and I'm asking how to be limitless. So
it.
I love that. I wanted to ask you about sleep. So in the book, you go into the physiology of how to keep your brain in good health, reducing inflammation through movement, through nutrients. You even give like recipes in the book. It's wonderful. One of the things I know just in, the conversations that we've had, is sleep has been this ongoing struggle for almost as long as I've known you. I think it's gotten better recently, but I would love for you to share what your rituals are around sleep, particularly, and I'd like you to contrast them, if there is a difference between when you're at home and you have the luxury and you can luxuriate in the time of an evening
Right.
routine, and then potentially when you're traveling, where you may be crossing time zones, and travel in general can be rather fatiguing. So can you talk about your sleep rituals and contrast them, if you have
Yeah,
different rituals? Yeah.
absolutely. So sleep. It was as for years I had challenges with my sleep because I was not diagnosed with. When I went to UCLA, I got this big sleep study done years ago, and it looked like that I actually have sleep apnea, very severe sleep apnea, where I would stop breathing over 200 times every single night.
Mm.
And every single time an episode was measured by at least 10 seconds. And the doctor was like, no wonder you're not sleeping. It's like somebody's coming in with a pillow and putting it on your face 200 times a night, and you're waking up because you can't breathe. And they put me on a CPAP breathing device, and then that wasn't working real well. They built me a dental device and all these things, and my sleep really wasn't improving very much. And on top of it, I had this surgery where they call it a UPPP, where they cut out your tonsils, your uvula, soft palate, because it was an obstructive physiological challenge. I've later found out that both my parents and siblings, they all have sleep apnea. So part of it was this kind of genetic lottery that I won.
Mechanical, yes, yeah.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And then it was exasperated though, because all through high school and college, I had very poor sleep hygiene because in order to keep up, I would pull all these all-nighters all the time. So at a very young age, I was training myself just to not sleep because I had to work 3 times harder than everybody else. And all-nighters are not good for the brain. They're certainly not good for memory. But I had these challenges. And so sleep, when it comes to your cognition, we know that it's top of the list, right? And for your brain, it's when you consolidate short to long-term memory. So if anyone's having long-term memory issues, check your sleep. It's where you clean out beta amyloid plaque that potentially could lead to brain aging challenges. It's also where you dream. You and I have talked about in the past how in our dreams we're very creative and come up with ideas and inventions and solutions to problems, all that.
Mm.
And so I really dialed in sleep, making that a priority. It was very difficult, also exasperated not just by what I did in school, all those all-nighters. It's just when I found my purpose, teach people how to learn, I would be on planes all the time. There's one year I was on over 240 days out of the year just not sleeping at home. And so that's a lot of time zone international travel. And so typically, the good news is my sleep has improved a lot more of recent with friends like yourself. I can't tell you how many times I've texted you after you posted like your sleep score on Instagram or something like that. I was like, are you getting that REM sleep? Right? Are you getting that deep sleep? Because my sleep is definitely not perfect because, some things take a little bit more time, to be able to, turn a cruise ship like just on a dime. And so I know what it feels like for literally over a decade or more just not getting it. I mean, I was averaging about 2 hours, 3 hours of sleep a night. I mean, that's how severe, interrupted, waking up over that time 9 to 14 times just because of my issue. And so it made me do a lot of episodes on the nature of sleep and interviewing a lot of our mutual friends, doctors and biohackers and just experts on sleep. So for me, I keep it very, very simple. My sleep regimen now, because I fall asleep in like 4 minutes because my mind is not racing at all. Like it's like I meditate and I would do all these recovery and I have a float tank and I do all these things to rejuvenate myself. But falling asleep is not the issue because I'm not ruminating over things because I have very good mind control, if you will.
Yes.
But part of it is the ones that you've talked about on your show. Temperature is a big deal for me. So I have the pad and I have the blanket on top, the weighted blanket that's also cooling also as well. I'm testing right now a cooling device that goes around my forehead that keeps you like keeps the temperature cool, because I think everybody is a little bio individual. Some people are ultra sensitive to temperature, other people are very ultra sensitive to light. When I travel, I do everything I can to be able to light proof the room. I literally bring tape and like these clips to be able to kind of keep the curtains closed and everything, because I am ultra sensitive light sleeper in general. So temperature, light is a big deal. When I'm here, I'll do like these like I have a sauna and a cold plunge here, so I'll also do that where I could kind of down regulate. My whole life has been really spending time getting in the parasympathetic, whether it's body work or doing something physical for me to get in my body where I can rest, digest, recover. Um, I'll sometimes take a warm bath and put Epsom salt. So I think the magnesium it helps me to sleep better also as well. I'm okay with sound. Sound doesn't bother me, but sometimes I will play some kind of sleep meditation music. I don't keep my phone in the bedroom because I feel like I've had conversations with a lot of individuals like Simon Sinek, and we've had videos done together talking about just having a phone like at the dinner table just creates anxiety. Just the sight of it, even if it's face down, it makes a difference. And I feel like having the phone in the room is this unconscious attachment where I could just kind of grab it. So I'm really big on setting up this sleep sanctuary or my environment. Now, when I travel, obviously I don't have like some of this technology or I've conditioned, I only use my bedroom. I mean, that's the other thing about learning is like we anchor certain states to the environment that we're in. And so that's why you shouldn't be doing work in the bedroom, or just like my computer I only use for work, but I have an like iPad for more entertainment, but I don't use that for work also. So I've trained myself for objects and location to access certain states. In the bedroom, I want to be able to rest. I don't want to be able, I'm not working at all in the bedroom. Or if I get up in the middle of the night, I can't go back to sleep, I'll go into my office and I'll work then.
Mm-hmm.
When I travel, sometimes I don't have the luxury of some of this technology, but I'll still keep it to the basics, which is light, which is temperature, which I can control. Sometimes I'll get a room with people see me on Instagram do this all the time, but both with the bathtub, and I'll literally make trips to
The
the ice
ice machine.
machine literally
I
every
love
time,
that.
because I'll do my ice baths
That's
because
great.
it is very healing and nurturing for me also as well. I'm experimenting a little bit with lion's mane for REM sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, REM, I noticed that my REM goes down, like my cognitive, like it's not performing as well. When my deep sleep is out of whack, and physically I could feel it also as well. What would you say for you? Because this is actually just a hot topic for me. What are your like three things?
So when I'm traveling, so at home, I have a very similar routine as you. So one of the things I try to do when I first wake up in the morning is expose myself to light. So I'll try to go to the window, or if I can go, I'm in Toronto right now, so it's not the best weather in March. Like it's a little unpredictable. So I'll try to at least get beside a window or go outside. So I'm getting that natural light. So I'm getting that circadian rhythm information, like the SCN or the area that looks at light. I'm
What about
blasting it.
what about the red light therapy? Those
Yeah,
like
so that's another. I have a red light, a little mini travel. Juve is the company, no affiliation, but I will just blast myself for 10 minutes with that red light. When I'm traveling, this is my little hack, and I want you to try this, and then I want you to tell me if it works for you. So I always do the blackout blinds, but one of the things that I often will use is socks. So I will wear socks to bed, because what we're talking about when you're trying to cool down your temperature, you're trying to cool down your core body temperature. And I don't know if this is just me being female, but my hands and my feet tend to be a little colder. So when my feet and my hands are cold, I'm more uncomfortable. But if I
mm,
have socks on, I can bring the heat, like I can, charm the heat from my core to my feet. And that's a way to evaporate, or that's a way to expel some of the core body heat. So I find that when I sleep with socks on when I'm traveling, I know it's not the sexiest, but it works. I would love for you to try it and tell me what you think, because that's been the big changer for me when I wear socks in a
Wow.
hotel room overnight. And I keep the room, like, they have the little thermometers that you can set or the thermostats where you can set the temperature. So I usually try to keep it at around 68 or 69. But the socks are the thing that really works for me.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm all on that.
Yeah. So try that. Tell me what you think. Like, text me next time you're out of town and tell me how that works for you.
I have my superhero socks.
Superhero socks. And what the other thing I wanted to talk about, which I was so excited about, was the dream recollection that you talked about in the book. And I have to tell you, I the other day, regular night sleeping, whatever, and Giovanni and I, my partner, who you are very good friends with, we woke up, and he looked at me and he said, "Steph, what? Do you remember anything about last night? Like, do you remember anything that was happening?" And I'm like, "No, what happened?" And he was like, "You were for about an hour speaking full on French to who I don't know." But
Oh,
he was like, at first I thought it was gibberish. And then he leaned in closer and I was like, on some soliloquy. I mean, that was my first language. I spoke French
right, right.
first. So, and I don't use it as often living in where I do. But anyway, so it's funny for me because I know I have these crazy dreams. I know I go on these cosmic journeys, and there's that point for
Yeah,
me right before I wake up where I can remember them, and like the second I open my eyes, it's gone. So
yeah,
I wanted to talk about, and this is, for my own, because I want to start recording my dreams because I don't do that. I
sure.
wanted you to maybe talk a little bit about your protocol for this, because this was, and I have a couple questions about it, but can you share how you record your dreams?
Absolutely. So the importance of this for me is we'll probably spend about 20 years of our life sleeping, maybe 3 to 5 of them in totality dreaming. And that's a big chunk of time that we're investing in that process. And for me, dreams are a wonderful source of treasure. When I started doing research on dream states and remembering dreams and creativity, I always saw this theme come up where great inventions and works of art, literature, music came from dream states.
Hmm.
Like Mary Shelley came up with Frankenstein in her dream. Like she dreamt of Frankenstein. That's amazing. Paul McCartney came up with the song Yesterday in his dream. A chemist came up with the framework of the periodic table in a dream, right? Elias Howe, who's an inventor, came up with the sewing machine in his dream. And athlete upon athlete, so many examples. Like Jack Nicklaus was shooting high 70s, and he was in a real slump, and he had a dream of just changing his grip, and it was so real for him that he remembered it, and he tried it the next day and shot like mid 60s, and he got back in his zone, if you will. So your brain doesn't, we know through research that our brain doesn't shut off at night. If anything, sometimes it's even more active in certain regions. And what are we doing? We're consolidating short to long-term memory, but we're also coming up with ideas. Because if you're studying all day as a student, or you're learning all day as an entrepreneur, your brain is still continuing that process. And this is not dream interpretation. This is just, we're talking about dream recollection. Now, the power of your mind, it's interesting. So in there, I give a framework, which we could go through very, very quickly. Of course, it's an acronym like everything else. It's because I want to make it very easily memorable for you, so people don't have to refer back to the book if they don't need to. But dreams, right? Dreams. And just remember dreams. The D in dreams stands for decide. Really decide that you're going to remember your dreams. And I think that intention is just really important, because most people don't really decide to remember someone's name. They don't decide to actually really decide to read a book a week, or decide with full decision and resolution that they're going to learn a language. And so start with the idea that you want to set that intention and actually decide, like make a real decision that you're going to, because your mind knows the difference between something you're just interested in and something you're truly deciding. The R in dreams stands for record. And we know this. And I have a dream journal that's just dedicated. That's what I have on the side. I have two journals on the side of my bed. And one of them is a dream journal, and I'll write on it. And I feel like that you need to be able to capture that, and when you could record it. Now, some people don't like to write. Sometimes I'll have, like, I have a pen that has a little light on it, so then if I wake up in the middle of the night, it's something that's juicy, I'll write it down. Sometimes I'll audio record it also as well. So not my phone, but I have an audio recorder that if I wanted to go back and reflect on it without,
Smart.
make
Yeah.
my turning the lights on and everything else,
Yeah.
that's the way of recording it. And what you're doing is you're putting conscious attention towards your dreams, right? When you're deciding to do it, when you're recording it, you're putting more energy there, which that alone, putting your attention to something, just like putting your attention on the person's face or putting your attention to the person's name, you're more likely to, it makes it more memorable, right? The E in dreams stands for eyes, and it helps to be able to keep your eyes shut. And you have to train yourself to do this. But a lot of times we forget our dreams just because we have outside distraction. And immediately when we open our eyes, our attention goes elsewhere. And so you can start training yourself when you wake up to keep your eyes closed as you're going through and kind of reflecting on your dream, and kind of rehearsing and reviewing your dream before you actually write it down. The A is affirm. And this is actually really big. This is something that's very interesting. Have you ever, this is actually what I started doing a few years ago, which led to extraordinary results. Have you ever had to wake up you're going to bed, you're setting the alarm for especially something early, like you have to catch a flight, or you have to get up especially early for something like 4:30 in the morning or 5 o'clock in the morning, something that's unusual than other times. Have you ever woken up like a minute before your alarm goes
Yes.
off? That
Yes.
happens, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that an amazing? I mean, just think about it for a moment. You set an intention, like, and some energy towards like a goal. Like I want to wake up. I have to wake up at 5 o'clock. That's my intention, right?
Mm.
You set an external alarm, and you wake up within minutes of that alarm. Like, what if the night before we set intentions for our dreams the night before? Or like what we want to solve, like a problem. We open up a loop in our mind, not obsess about it where we're thinking, our executive mind thinking about it all night, but just set intention or write it down. It's like, oh, I would like to meditate on this or sleep on this problem, or this is something I want to be able to create. And then set that intention, and with that same power of you waking up almost to the minute when your alarm clock goes on, which is just astonishing. What if you set your affirmation? You started to affirm that you're gonna remember your dream, and something you want to specifically program your dream to go. To set an intention that way. I also do this for lucid dreaming. A new episode coming out was specifically geared towards lucid dreaming. And one of the things you could start affirming is that you'll remember your dreams, but also you could affirm that you'll be becoming aware of your dreams, because a next level skill potentially for those interested in it is lucid dreaming. As you know, is awareness. It means that state where you're dreaming. Is this something you do naturally, or something you've had?
I think so. Yeah.
It's like where you're in the middle of a dream and you realize that you're
That you're
actually dreaming,
dreaming.
right?
Yes. Yeah.
That's an area of lucid dreaming. And so there's a process, just like with everything that looks like magic, it doesn't happen by accident. You could actually train yourself to be more lucid in your dreams.
Mm.
And what's the benefit of becoming aware of the dreaming process? Like when you're doing it, it's that you could direct your dreams and kind of choreograph things. You could, people use it to lucid dreaming to face fears and phobias, because they can introduce themselves to something that they're nervous about,
Mm.
but in a safe place, knowing that they're dreaming, and get all the benefits of, your sleep, in terms of, using your dreams. And one of the things you could affirm is that I'm going to be lucid when I'm dreaming more. Or you could train yourself to ask a question like, 100 times a day, ask yourself, is this a dream? Is this a dream? Is this a dream? I know we're going off topic in terms of remembering your dream, but if you start asking yourself, you start to focus on it. And the first time the answer is yes, then you're like lucid dreaming, right? Or you could train yourself to have triggers like I do for my habits. Like maybe every time you walk through a doorway, you've trained yourself to ask yourself, is this a dream? Or something. So when you start doing it in a dream, you trigger that memory and that those words, and then you become more conscious of it. But the A again in dreams are affirm. The M in dreams stands for manage. And what are you managing? You're managing your sleep, right? Because obviously you're not going to get those dreams if you're not getting quality sleep. And so we talked about that already. And then finally, the S in dreams stands for share. Get in the habit of sharing, not just recording, but get in the habits of talking to your significant other or other individuals about your dreams, because again, it's putting energy towards this process of dreaming, and you get more conscious about it, and so by sharing your dreams with other people, you start becoming more aware of your own dreams. And you can share it many different ways. There's forums even online on Facebook and everything where people are sharing their dreams and they get in the habit. So even if you don't know somebody that'd be interested in hearing those dreams, you're doing it in a way that's enhancing your experience.
That is fascinating. I'm going to start doing those because I know I go on crazy dreams. And like I said, there's this window right before I'm awake where I'm like, wow, that was a really crazy dream. And then, just like you said, my eyes open and it's gone. And as Giovanni was like, you were like talking with your hands and talking in French. And I was like, oh, yeah, you know what? I think I was talking. And then it was kind of triggering things for me because it was right when I had woken up. And I was like, I think I was talking to, there was like this divine light. Like I thought I was talking to, name whatever it is, God, source, whatever. And it was this big ball of sunshine that I was talking to. So I ended up being able to pick out some clues from my dream from him saying to me, what he thought I was saying. And, with his, I mean, my sleep French and his, his, what he thinks, his understanding of French is. I have one last question for you.
Yes.
And you were in the book, you were talking about there, it was a Friday night. Someone called you up and they said, my speaker canceled. I need you to come and do his keynote. So this whole thing, and you, someone had referred him to you because you were a speed reader, because you have all these techniques in terms of an upgraded learning curve, speed and focus, and being able to to have retention of the information. And in the book, you said, you know what, this is something I just could not refuse. So I got there at, whatever it was the
Right.
next morning, 9 or 10 o'clock. And then I had to give the keynote on this topic that I had no idea. And you didn't tell the readers what the topic was. And I was wondering if you could tell us what that keynote was on. Cause I was like, oh my God, can you imagine what this was like? And I was like, what's the topic? What's the topic, Jim? Can you tell us what it was?
All right, wait. So can we pause for a second?
Yes.
um, um, okay. Give me 1 second.
All right.
Not like the build up is like, I didn't know. I had an idea of where you're going with it. Wait,
Mhm.
so your editor is gonna just pause this for a
Yes,
moment.
this is, yeah, I can even just, let me just pause right now. Oh, that's fine. All right, so we're going to cut that last question out and we're going to move into the conclusion. So I'll just do this in the time stamping. So, Jim, I just want to say to you that in my very humble opinion, this is one of the best books that I have read on learning. You really go through every possible scenario, whether it's all the different tenets of mindset, all the different tenets of motivation, and the different tenets of methods where you outline, how to think, which is incredible. And I think it's a really timeless piece of work that people can come to over and over and over again, wherever they are in their growth, to continue to level up and become, the limitless, the better version of themselves. So we are timing this episode to release with the book. Can you tell people, where is it in any store? Is it Limitless Book Doc? Where can people find the book and where can they order it?
We did something very special. We created actually a 10-day program. So while people could go to the bookstore and they could go online to get it, if they go to limitlessbook.com,
Mm-hmm.
I recorded for them a coaching program where about 10 or 15 minutes a day for 10 days, we could give them a quick start on becoming limitless. And so even before they even received the book, they could go through this program and learn some of the fundamentals to mindset, motivation, energy, speed reading, remembering what you read in this 10-day program. And it's something that we created absolutely free to celebrate the launch of the book. And they could go to limitlessbook.com and all the information is there. So when people order it, they'll get immediate access to that program. And that alone, it's interesting because I created it and so that people got so much value after the first like video. So if you enjoyed this conversation, that first video and second one, I feel like will absolutely blow your mind, basically, and prove to you that you are faster, smarter than you could possibly think.
You are a Kanye West song.
Yeah.
Faster, better, smarter, harder, longer. Yeah. Jim, I just want to thank you again. It's always a pleasure when I get to have this time with you,
Oh,
and it's so precious to me. And I'm so excited about this book. Thank you so much for taking the time to share
yeah.
this with our audience.
Stephanie, can I ask for a challenge for everybody who's
Ooh,
yeah?
yes, of course.
We did this last time and we got such a great response. If people, I remember we talked about teaching something, and when you share it, you get to learn it twice. I would
Yes.
challenge everybody who's listening to this to screenshot this podcast episode or this video or a picture of your notes, and in the comments, share like just one aha, like one thing that you got out of this conversation that you feel is a gem for you. Was I call them brain drops, or these little brain bites that, or one new activity or action you're going to take because of it, and post it on social media and tag Stephanie, tag myself, and I'll repost some of my favorites like we did last time.
Yes.
And because I really want to see what people like, what that one thing is that people could focus on, or maybe one new activity that maybe just open them in a new direction. And that's really the reason why I do what I do. You know, growing up as a kid with a broken brain, I just want to build better, brighter brains, better for sure, and leave no brain left behind. So take a screenshot of your notes or this episode, tag us both, and then I will actually send I'll send an advanced copy to my favorite one.
Oh, that's incredible. Oh, and that's such a great Easter egg to have right at the end of the episode too. So I appreciate that. All right.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much also for the cape that you wear. I have this like Captain Marvel statue and Wonder Woman statue, and I always think about you. So thank you
Oh,
for being a real life
thank you,
hero
Jim.
for so many people, and thank you everybody for joining us.
Thank you so much, Jim. You are such a delight.